What if the most devastating weapon ever created wasn't forged in a modern laboratory, but hidden deep within the heart of ancient mythology? For centuries, whispers have circulated about a force so powerful, it could shake the very foundations of existence. A weapon said to belong to Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction, capable of unleashing devastation beyond human comprehension. But here's the chilling twist: there are those who believe this isn't just a legend. That somewhere, hidden in the shadows, a secret society has guarded this terrifying relic for millennia, ensuring it never falls into the wrong hands. And today, we're pulling back the curtain on this enigmatic mystery. Picture this: crumbling temples etched with cryptic symbols, ancient texts warning of celestial fire, and a lineage of guardians sworn to silence. These aren't fragments of a fantasy novel, they're threads of a real-world conspiracy that stretches across time. Historians have long debated the existence of advanced weaponry in ancient civilizations, but few dare to ask the explosive question: could the stories of Shiva's atomic weapon be more than myth? Could there be a truth buried beneath layers of secrecy waiting to be uncovered? This isn't just about dusty relics or forgotten lore. It's about a puzzle that challenges everything we think we know about humanity's past and its future. Who are these shadowy protectors? What rituals bind them to their sacred duty? And most haunting of all, what happens if their vigil ever fails? Strap in, because we're about to venture into a world where history, mythology, and conspiracy collide. A journey that will take us from the sacred rivers of India to the hidden chambers of forbidden knowledge. The answers are closer than you think and far more terrifying than you've ever imagined. To understand the terrifying power of Shiva's weapon, we need to step into the heart of Hindu mythology, where gods don't just shape reality, they can unmake it. Shiva, known as the Destroyer, isn't just a force of chaos, he's the necessary counterbalance to creation itself. Without destruction, there can be no renewal. And his most feared instrument of transformation, the Pashupatastra, a weapon so potent, ancient texts describe it as capable of annihilating entire universes. But here's what's fascinating: this wasn't just some symbolic metaphor. The descriptions are eerily specific. It's said to manifest as a beam of light hotter than the sun, released with a single thought, leaving nothing but ash in its wake. Sound familiar? Now compare that to modern atomic weapons. The blinding flash, the unimaginable heat, the utter devastation. The parallels are unsettling. And the Pashupatastra isn't alone. Hindu epics are filled with celestial weapons or astras, each with their own apocalyptic signatures. The Brahmastra, for instance, could level mountains and boil oceans. The Narayanastra unleashed millions of searing projectiles, raining fire from the sky. The details read less like mythology and more like ancient accounts of something horrifyingly real. Could these be distorted memories of advanced technology? Or worse, were they warnings? Here's where it gets even more intriguing. Ancient texts like the Mahabharata describe battles where these weapons were used, painting scenes that feel ripped from a nuclear war documentary. Entire armies wiped out in an instant, survivors with hair falling out, skin peeling away, symptoms chillingly similar to radiation poisoning. And always there are the keepers, the ones who knew how to wield or restrain these forces. Were they priests, scientists, or something else entirely? The deeper you dig, the more the lines blur between myth and history, between gods and beings who might have once walked among us. So why does Shiva, of all deities, hold this destructive power? Because in the cosmic cycle, destruction isn't the end, it's the reset button. And if that's true, then the real question isn't just whether these weapons existed. It's whether someone or something made sure we'd forget them for a reason. The Mahabharata doesn't just describe battles, it documents apocalypses. Among its most terrifying passages is the account of the Brahmastra, a weapon so cataclysmic, its activation was said to darken the sky, silence birds mid-flight, and make rivers flow backward. When the sage Ashwatthama unleashed it in desperation, the text recounts flames brighter than 1,000 suns, reducing entire cities to smoldering craters. Survivors wandered like ghosts, their armor fused to their bodies by the heat, their water sources poisoned. The descriptions are unnervingly precise: thermal radiation, shock waves, even what we'd now call nuclear winter. It's as if the ancient scribes were transcribing an eyewitness account of a Hiroshima millennia before the atomic age, but the Brahmastra wasn't unique. The Mahabharata catalogues an arsenal of astras with disturbingly modern parallels. The Agnyastra rained firestorms that burned for days, clinging to victims like napalm. The Varunastra could drown armies in artificial tsunamis, while the Vajra struck with pinpoint precision, targeting single warriors like a cosmic smart missile. Each weapon had strict ethical codes governing its use, and misuse brought cosmic repercussions, a detail that echoes modern fears of mutually assured destruction. Why would ancient societies invent such specific, systemic rules for mythical tools unless they'd seen the consequences firsthand? The most chilling detail, though, lies in the aftermath. Texts describe warriors who survived initial blasts only to perish later from mysterious wasting diseases, their nails and hair falling out, their skin blistered by invisible poison. Ancient physicians named it Agnimukhha, the mouth of fire, and warned it could linger in the land for generations. Compare that to radioactive fallout, and the parallels become impossible to ignore. Even the precautions align. Warriors were instructed to bathe in sacred rivers after battle, rituals that might have served a practical purpose: decontamination. What's truly unsettling is how these stories transcend Hinduism. The Babylonians wrote of Marduk's unfaceable weapon that melted stone. Greek myths tell of Athena's aegis, a shield that could burn armies to ash. Worldwide, cultures preserved near-identical tales of gods wielding world-ending power, and of human folly unleashing it, coincidence or fragmented memories of a forgotten chapter in human history. The Brahmastra's legacy forces us to confront an uncomfortable possibility that our ancestors weren't just imagining horrors, they were remembering them. And if that's true, the real question isn't whether such weapons existed, it's who or what took them away. Hidden beneath the layers of time, scattered across ancient manuscripts and whispered in temple corridors, lies the shadowy history of those sworn to protect Shiva's most dangerous secrets. Some say this clandestine order traces its roots to the Kapalikas, a radical sect of ascetics who worshipped Shiva in his most fearsome form, the bearer of the skull, the lord of destruction. These weren't ordinary monks. They practiced rituals in cremation grounds, smeared their bodies with ash, and carried staffs topped with human skulls as a grim reminder of mortality's inevitability. But their most sacred duty, guarding knowledge too dangerous for the uninitiated. Legends speak of a splinter group within these ascetics, chosen not just for their devotion but for their unshakable discipline. Known as the Pashupata, they were said to have been entrusted with the secrets of the Pashupatastra itself, not to wield it but to ensure no one ever could. Texts like the Shiva Purana hint at their existence, describing a lineage of guardians who passed down their charge through encrypted oral traditions, their identities erased from public record. Their initiation rites allegedly involved trials of mental endurance, where candidates were subjected to visions of the weapon's devastation, a psychological gauntlet designed to weed out the unworthy. But the most compelling evidence might lie outside religious texts. In the 7th century, the Chinese traveler Xuanzang documented encounters with mysterious keepers of celestial fire in the forests of central India. His journals describe hermits who could allegedly summon flames with a chant, yet refused to demonstrate their full power, claiming it was forbidden by ancient covenant. Centuries later, Mughal historians noted a reclusive community near the Himalayas who turned away even the most curious emperors, warning of a curse that burns the curious. Could these scattered accounts point to the same clandestine brotherhood? The society's influence might even extend into modern times. In 1947, just months after India's independence, a British geologist exploring Rajasthan's abandoned stepwells reported finding a hidden chamber lined with peculiar murals, depictions of a radiant weapon being sealed away by hooded figures. Local laborers refused to enter, muttering about the old watchers. The site was inexplicably filled in with concrete within weeks. Coincidence, or the silent hand of a tradition that's endured far longer than any empire? What binds these fragments together is a pattern of deliberate obscurity. Unlike other secret societies, these guardians left no grand temples, no manifestos, only echoes. Perhaps because their greatest weapon wasn't just the knowledge they guarded, but the certainty that some truths are too volatile to be uncovered. And that's what makes their legacy so unsettling. In a world where every mystery is eventually solved, their secrets remain stubbornly out of reach by design. Clues about this secretive brotherhood aren't buried in obscure footnotes, they're hiding in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of India's most sacred texts. Take the Rig Veda, one of humanity's oldest surviving scriptures. Amidst its hymns to deities and cosmic forces, there's a cryptic verse describing the Angarasas, a group of seers who carried the fire that burns unseen. These weren't just poets, they're called guardians of the terrible knowledge, tasked with ensuring certain hymns were never recited in full. Why? Because some verses, when uttered in sequence, were believed to manifest destructive forces. A later commentary, the Shatapatha Brahmana, warns that mispronouncing these hymns could split the earth asunder. This wasn't metaphorical, it was treated as a technical manual, with strict protocols around who could access these passages and when. Then there's the Puranas, particularly the Shiva Purana and the Skanda Purana, which contain unsettling gaps. Entire chapters end abruptly, replaced by lines like, "What follows is not to be written, only remembered." In one section, the god Skanda explicitly forbids a sage from recording the true nature of the Pashupatastra, instructing him to bind it in the heart, not on parchment. Even more revealing are the Upa Puranas, lesser-known companion texts where accidental details slip through. The Kalika Purana mentions a brotherhood of the ashes who performed rituals in sealed underground chambers, using copper plates etched with symbols that pained the eyes to behold. Copper, interestingly, is one of the few metals known to shield against radiation. But the smoking gun might lie in the Tamil epic Silappatikaram, where a queen seeks a weapon to avenge her husband's death. A mysterious sage refuses her, stating, "The guardians of the northern mountains have sealed what you seek." When she presses him, he describes a cave system where 7 layers of fire protect a relic that drinks the sky and spits forth stars. The description mirrors modern accounts of nuclear reactions, and that northern mountains align eerily with the Himalayas, long rumored to harbor secret societies. Perhaps the most chilling evidence comes from the Agni Purana, which details a ritual to calm the wrath of the Astra. It involves chanting while circling a pit filled with neem leaves, turmeric, and salt, materials now known to neutralize radioactive particles. The text even specifies the chant must be recited exactly 108 times, a number sacred in Hinduism but also curiously precise. Were these merely symbolic gestures or step-by-step decontamination protocols passed down as religious rites? The pattern is undeniable. Across millennia and regions, India's scriptures return to the same themes: hidden knowledge, catastrophic power, and a select few entrusted to keep the balance. These texts weren't just preserving myths, they were encrypting warnings, and somewhere in the silence between the lines, the guardians still keep their watch. Walk through any ancient Shiva temple, and you'll notice something strange. The walls aren't just decorated, they're speaking. Hidden in plain sight among the gods and demons carved into stone lie symbols so peculiar they defy conventional interpretation. Take the lingam, for instance. Most see it as a simple representation of divine energy, but look closer. Some temple carvings depict it surrounded by concentric rings like shockwaves radiating outward. At the Hoysaleswara temple in Karnataka, these rings are etched with precision, each layer containing tiny, intricate figures, some holding what appear to be rods or vessels, their postures rigid, almost ritualistic. Could these be instructions, a visual cipher left by the guardians? Then there's the recurring motif of the trident Shiva's iconic Trishula. While traditionally symbolizing creation, preservation, and destruction, certain temples add unsettling details. In the caves of Elephanta, the trident's prongs are shown emitting jagged lines, resembling modern diagrams of electrical discharge. Even more telling are the bas-reliefs at the Brihadiswara temple, where the trident is flanked by hooded figures whose hands are raised not in prayer, but in what looks eerily like controlled gestures, fingers splayed, palms angled precisely. Local priests call these the silent watchers, claiming they represent an ancient lineage tasked with containing the uncontainable. But the most compelling evidence might lie in the temple ceilings. At Chidambaram's Nataraja temple, the golden roof isn't just ornate, it's a geometric puzzle. Interlocking triangles form complex patterns that match sacred yantras used in tantric rituals to harness energy. When sunlight filters through, the shadows cast aren't random. They align with specific carvings on the floor only during equinoxes, illuminating hidden sequences of Sanskrit numerals. Researchers in the 1980s noted these numerals correspond to measurements found in Vedic texts describing the span of the Astra's wrath, a unit of distance that, when converted, equals roughly 12 kilometers. The exact radius of the blast zone described in the Mahabharata's Brahmastra passages. Perhaps the most chilling detail, though, is the absence of certain symbols where you'd expect them. In most Shiva temples, the god's third eye is prominently displayed, but at the remote Kapalswara temple in Odisha, the third eye is conspicuously missing from every carving except one. Deep in the temple's innermost chamber, a single weathered panel shows Shiva with his third eye open, but instead of the usual flame, the pupil is a spiral with 7 lines radiating outward. Below it, an inscription warns, "The gaze that unravels." The same spiral appears in Tibetan Buddhist mandalas representing the vortex of annihilation, and in Jain cosmology as the mark of the final dissolution. Coincidence or a shared memory of something older than all these faiths? These temples weren't just places of worship, they were repositories. The patterns, the omissions, the precise alignment of symbols, they form a language. One that doesn't just describe the weapon, but might actually encode its containment. And if that's true, then every visitor who walks these halls is standing inside a locked vault, unaware they're surrounded by the combination. Among the winding ghats of Varanasi and the mist-shrouded peaks of the Himalayas, a distinct group of holy men moves through crowds like shadows, the Naga sadhus. Cloaked in ashes, their matted locks coiled like serpents, these ascetics are more than just wandering mystics. Legends whisper they are the last living thread connecting our world to an oath made millennia ago, a vow to shield humanity from the destructive force once wielded by Shiva himself. Unlike other monks, the Nagas don't just renounce worldly life. They undergo brutal initiations, surviving freezing rivers, months of silence, and trials designed to break the unworthy. But what if these rituals aren't merely spiritual tests? What if their training? Historical accounts paint a compelling picture. In the 1800s, British colonial officers documented encounters with Naga warriors who guarded remote mountain passes, armed not with blades but with enchantments that could split stone. One officer's diary describes a sadhu who halted a landslide by pressing his palm to a rock face and murmuring words that made the earth vibrate like a struck bell. Local guides refused to translate, claiming the language was not for mortal tongues. Fast forward to 1975, when a team of anthropologists studying in Uttarakhand reported a Naga elder who accurately predicted a lunar eclipse down to the minute. using a hand-carved wooden wheel inscribed with symbols matching those found in the sealed chambers of Hoyselswara temple. Coincidence or fragments of preserved knowledge, the Naga's connection to Shiva's weapon might lie in their most guarded ritual, the Kumbh Mela bathing ceremony. While millions see this as a spiritual cleansing, few notice what happens afterward. Witnesses describe select Nagas vanishing into nearby forests for days, returning with their foreheads marked by a rare vermilion paste said to be mixed with ash from the first fire. The formula is a closely held secret, but ancient medical texts like the Bhava Prakasha reference a similar substance used to counteract celestial poisoning. Even more intriguing, modern spectrographic analysis of this paste revealed traces of mineral isotopes found only in deep Himalayan caves, geologists confirm have natural radiation shielding. But the most tantalizing clue emerged in 2012 when a journalist embedded with the Nagas recorded an elder's slip of the tongue. Asked about their famed fearlessness, the sadhu replied, "We are the flame that cannot be extinguished, for we remember the fire that burned the 7 worlds." The phrase mirrors a line from the Shiva Purana describing the Pashupatastra's aftermath. When pressed, the Nagas closed ranks, ending the interview. Yet their existence and their strategic presence near sites like the Kedarnath shrine, built atop what locals call the Door of the Astra, hints at a truth hiding in plain sight. What sets the Nagas apart isn't just their austerity, it's their silence. While other sects proselytize, these ascetics speak sparingly, their teachings encoded in gestures and symbols. Perhaps because some secrets are too dangerous for words, or perhaps because they're still keeping watch, ensuring that even if the world forgets, someone remembers how close we once came to holding the power of gods and why it was taken away. For generations, villagers living in the foothills of the Himalayas have told stories that would make even the most skeptical listener pause. In the remote valleys of Himachal Pradesh, elders speak of the silent ones, strange figures draped in ochre robes who appear during lunar eclipses, standing motionless atop ridges as if watching for something only they can see. Locals claim these figures vanish before dawn, leaving behind imprints in the snow shaped like tridents, the metal too cold to touch even hours later. One shepherd, interviewed in 1989, swore he followed them to a cave entrance that breathed a gust of warm air pulsing from the darkness in steady intervals. When he returned with others, the entrance had sealed over with ice as smooth as glass. Further south, in the forests of Madhya Pradesh, tribal communities preserve an even stranger tradition. During the festival of Mahashivratri, children are warned not to wander near certain banyan trees after sunset. The elders say these trees are guard posts, and those who stray too close sometimes hear a low hum like 1,000 bees singing in unison. In 2003, a botanical survey team recorded anomalous electromagnetic readings near these very trees' fluctuations with no discernible source. But the most chilling accounts come from Rajasthan's Thar Desert, where nomadic traders speak of the black light. Travelers who have gotten lost in sandstorms describe suddenly seeing a group of hooded figures holding aloft a single, dark flame that casts no glow yet illuminates the dunes in stark relief, a phenomenon physicists now recognize as the theoretical inverse of Cherenkov radiation. Perhaps the most credible eyewitness account surfaced in colonial archives. In 1872, a British railway engineer named Alfred Matheson filed an official report after encountering 7 unusually tall ascetics near the Indus River. They carried a sealed metal box emitting a faint blue glow, and when Matheson approached, one touched his shoulder, a contact that left the engineer bedridden for weeks with burns matching radiation exposure. His notes, long dismissed as delirium, included precise descriptions of the box's markings, interlocking triangles identical to those in Chidambaram temple's ceiling. The box itself was never found, but Matheson's medical records confirm his symptoms were real and medically inexplicable for the time. Then there's the case of the vanishing monastery. In the 1960s, a Nepalese climber named Dorje Sherpa swore he discovered a stone structure near Mount Kailash with walls covered in metallic inscriptions that shifted under torchlight. When he brought researchers to the site years later, the coordinates led only to an unbroken slope of ice. Yet Sherpa's sketches matched a 16th century Tibetan scroll depicting the Vault of the Unblinking Eye, said to house the weapon that sleeps. These scattered testimonies share uncanny consistencies: the trident symbols, the burns, the electromagnetic anomalies, threads that weave through time and geography with unsettling precision. What makes these accounts so compelling isn't just their consistency, but their restraint. Unlike typical folklore, these stories lack grandiose claims of magic or miracles. Instead, they focus on sensory details: sounds, temperatures, physiological effects that align disturbingly well with modern understanding of energy weapons and radiation. The villagers aren't describing gods or demons, they're reporting phenomena that behave like technology, just technology cloaked in the language of the sacred. And that distinction raises a chilling possibility that the secret society never truly vanished. It just learned to hide in plain sight, using the cloak of mythology to shield truths too dangerous to name. If the Pashupatastra exists today, where could something of such unimaginable power possibly be concealed? The Himalayas loom as the most obvious candidate, not just for their remoteness but for their sacred resonance. Mount Kailash, Shiva's mythical abode, is encircled by legends of hidden chambers where the air itself becomes fire. Pilgrims who trek the mountain slopes report strange metallic echoes underfoot, as if walking atop vast hollow spaces. Even more compelling are the accounts of monks from nearby Drikung monasteries, who speak of a labyrinth beneath the peaks called Yongsang, the secret land. According to their texts, its entrance shifts with the stars, visible only when the constellation Orion aligns with a specific rock formation. A formation geologists confirm contains unusually high levels of platinum, a metal known to shield against radiation. But the Himalayas aren't the only contender. Beneath the bustling streets of Varanasi, the city of Shiva, lies a network of submerged tunnels older than recorded history. In the 1920s, British archaeologists mapping the Ghats accidentally broke into one, documenting walls lined with copper plates etched in a script resembling the undeciphered Indus Valley symbols. The team's leader, John Marshall, described a sudden temperature drop and a vibration like distant thunder before locals forcibly resealed the passage. Today, temple priests perform nightly rituals along that exact stretch of riverbank, tossing offerings into the water while chanting verses that include the phrase, "Bind the unquiet flame." Coincidence or maintenance of an ancient containment protocol? Then there's the desert. Rajasthan's golden sands hide more than forts. Beneath the dunes of Jaisalmer lies a subterranean city called Kuldhara, abandoned overnight 2 centuries ago. Locals claim the villagers fled not from invaders, but from something uncovered in a blue light that made shadows scream. Modern expeditions have detected anomalous radiation spikes near one collapsed structure, now called the Silent House, where no birds nest and metal objects inexplicably warm to the touch. Nearby, a faded mural depicts hooded figures lowering a glowing orb into a pit, watched by a deity with third eye open. The style matches no known period of Indian art, yet the pigments used contain traces of uranium oxide, a material with no natural presence in the region. Perhaps the most haunting possibility lies in plain sight: the temples themselves. At the Konark Sun Temple in Odisha, the main sanctum has been filled with sand for centuries, officially to prevent collapse. But local artisans whisper that the sand isn't just structural, it's layered with salt, neem leaves, and crushed lapis lazuli, substances ancient texts prescribe for cooling celestial fire. Every 12 years, priests add fresh layers in a ceremony called Agni Samadhi, fire's rest. No one remembers when the tradition began, only that stopping it is forbidden. Meanwhile, beneath the temple's iconic chariot wheels, ground-penetrating radar has revealed a hollow chamber too precise to be natural, its walls lined with the same copper plates described in the Puranas. The truth may be stranger than any single theory. If the Guardians were real, they wouldn't stake everything on one location. They'd fragment the knowledge, scatter the components, and weave the safeguards into the fabric of the land itself, so that even if one lock broke, the weapon could never be fully assembled. Which means the real question isn't where the Pashupatastra rests. It's how many pieces are still waiting to be recognized. What makes these ancient accounts so unsettling isn't just their vividness, it's how precisely they mirror the science of modern destruction. Take the Brahmastra's description, a fireball brighter than 1,000 suns that leaves shadows burned into stone. That's not poetic exaggeration, it's the exact effect witnessed in Hiroshima, where the nuclear blast's thermal pulse etched human silhouettes onto walls. Even the Mahabharata's warning about poisoned water and withered crops aligns with what we now know of radioactive fallout. But here's what's truly chilling. The texts go further, detailing protocols that sound less like mythology and more like Cold War-era safety manuals. Verses in the Agni Purana instruct survivors to avoid the wind from the blast site and drink only from rivers flowing northward, directions that eerily match modern evacuation guidelines for nuclear incidents. The parallels extend to the weapon's mechanics. The Pashupatastra wasn't just a generic divine weapon. It was said to be activated by a specific mantra, a sequence of sounds that unlocked its fury. Compare that to nuclear launch codes where precise phonetic inputs trigger devastation. Even the Astra's delivery methods feel technologically grounded. Ancient texts describe the Narayanastra as striking with a rain of arrows that seek their target unerringly, resembling today's multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles or MIRV. The Vimana Shastra, a controversial Sanskrit text on aviation, goes further, detailing aircraft powered by liquid mercury engines, a concept NASA studied in the 1960s for ion propulsion systems. Declassified documents reveal that these connections weren't lost on 20th century scientists. Project Shiva, a little-known Indian military research initiative from the 1970s, secretly analyzed Vedic texts for energy weapon signatures. Files released in 2012 show physicists were particularly fascinated by the Mahabharata's account of the Brahmastra's shockwave, which made the earth ripple like water. Their notes compare it to the electromagnetic pulse effects of high-altitude nuclear tests. Meanwhile, in the West, Operation Morning Light, a joint U.S. Canada effort to recover a Soviet satellite with nuclear components, reportedly consulted Hindu scholars after agents found Sanskrit-like symbols on recovered debris. The most compelling evidence, though, lies in the materials. Ancient texts repeatedly mention thunderbolt iron or Vajra ayas, a metal said to be unbreakable yet lighter than air. Modern metallurgists note this matches the properties of titanium, a material used in nuclear shielding. Even more telling are temple artifacts like the Iron Pillar of Delhi, which has resisted rust for over 1,600 years due to an unexplained phosphorus-rich coating, a technique similar to modern radiation-resistant alloys. These aren't vague similarities, they're fingerprint-level details, and that raises a haunting possibility. What if the gods of mythology weren't deities at all, but custodians of a technology so advanced its misuse nearly shattered the ancient world? The warnings in these texts don't read like idle myths. They read like survival instructions from those who barely lived to tell the tale. Government archives hold more secrets than they reveal, especially when it comes to the forbidden corners of history. In 1962, an Indian archaeological survey team was dispatched to the Bhimbetka rock shelters, known for their prehistoric cave paintings. What they found in one sealed chamber wasn't just ancient art. It was a series of startlingly precise depictions of human figures surrounded by concentric rings of light, their limbs elongated as if caught in a shockwave. The lead archaeologist's report described the pigments as unnaturally vibrant, with traces of an unidentified metallic compound. But within weeks, the site was abruptly closed, citing structural instability. Stranger still, the original report vanished from official records, resurfacing decades later in a declassified U.S. State Department cable marked Eyes Only. The cable's chilling addendum, a recommendation to monitor regional folklore for Astra-related narratives. This wasn't an isolated incident. Across South Asia, there's a pattern of archaeological curiosities meeting bureaucratic brick walls. In the 1980s, a German team using ground-penetrating radar near the Dwarkadhish temple in Gujarat detected a massive underground cavity lined with metallic objects. Their permits were revoked the next day with no explanation. Local workers later claimed officials poured concrete into the boreholes under armed guard. Even more telling are the restrictions around Mount Kailash. Despite being a pilgrimage site, the Chinese government has banned all climbing expeditions since the 1950s, citing cultural sensitivity. Yet declassified Soviet memos from the same period reveal their geologists suspected anomalous energy readings near the summit readings that disappeared from later surveys without comment. The suppression isn't just historical. In 2017, an Indian journalist filed a right to information request about Project Shivoham, the military's Vedic technology study. The response, a single page with every line blacked out except the title. That same year, Nepal's Department of Archaeology quietly confiscated a private collector's artifacts, a set of 12th century palm leaf manuscripts describing the flame that sleeps beneath Swayambhanath. The collector was paid compensation on the condition he signed a non-disclosure agreement, a near unheard of measure for antiquities. What makes these cases so unsettling is their consistency. From colonial-era document seizures to modern-day gag orders, the thread is always the same. Artifacts or sites that tangibly connect to the Astra legends get buried, sometimes literally. Even NASA satellite imagery of the Himalayas shows bizarre pixelation over specific coordinates, glitches that don't align with standard censorship protocols. The message is clear: someone, somewhere has decided humanity isn't ready to face what might still lie hidden. And that raises a darker question: are these cover-ups meant to protect us from the weapon? Or to protect the weapon from us? The threads of Shiva's secret guardians don't exist in isolation. They weave into a far darker tapestry of hidden orders, some sworn to protect, others to exploit. Take the infamous Thuggis, the cult of Kali-worshipping assassins who terrorized colonial India. Officially, they were strangle-for-hire brigands, but their rituals tell a stranger story. Initiates underwent a gruesome ceremony where they pledged to bind the breath of the unworthy, using yellow scarves said to be dyed with sulfur, an element linked in alchemical texts to celestial fire. More chilling are their encrypted ledger books recovered by the British in the 1830s, which contained not just accounts of murders, but diagrams of temple layouts matching those rumored to house Astra fragments. Were they mere thieves or hunters searching for something far deadlier? Then there's the legend of the 9 unknown men, an alleged society founded by Emperor Ashoka after the Kalinga War, a conflict so devastating ancient historians claim the rivers ran red for days. Ashoka supposedly tasked 9 scholars with guarding advanced knowledge too dangerous for the masses, dividing it into 9 books. One volume reportedly covered microbiology, another the science of light and shadows. But the third, titled Vishwayantra, it was said to detail engines of universal destruction. French occultist Louis Jacqueliot wrote in 1869 of encountering a Tamil priest who whispered of a brotherhood beneath the Raj palaces, preserving devices that could unstitch the sky. The timing is noteworthy. Jacqueliot's account predates the Manhattan Project by 70 years, yet his description of the weapons' effects mirrors Oppenheimer's later recollections of the Trinity test. The connections grow stranger when you cross borders. Tibetan Buddhist texts speak of the Shambhala guardians, monks who supposedly safeguarded a relic called the Iron Lotus, a sphere that could split mountains with a whisper. 19th century Russian explorer Nikolai Przhevalsky documented a Burn priest's warning about a hidden valley where the air hums like a plucked bowstring, guarded by figures whose touch left metallic burns. Sound familiar? Even the Knights Templar, often linked to biblical relics, may have sought more than the Holy Grail. In the Vatican's suppressed Chinon parchment, a Templar knight confesses to searching for the Eastern flame that does not consume, hidden beneath a temple of the destroyer god. What binds these groups together isn't just secrecy, it's a recurring obsession with contained power. The Thuggees strangled to silence witnesses. The 9 unknown men encrypted their knowledge. The Shambhala legends speak of frozen lakes that drown fire in ice. Every culture, every era seems to have its own version of the guardians, not just preserving dangerous truths but ensuring they remain fragmented. Because the greatest protection isn't hiding the weapon, it's making certain no single hand can ever hold all the pieces. The initiation rites rumored to bind members of this secretive order aren't for the faint of heart. Whispers passed down through generations describe trials that blur the line between spiritual awakening and psychological ordeal. One account, sourced from a 19th century colonial officer's diary, tells of a candidate being led blindfolded into a cavern lit only by shimmering copper bowls of oil. There, they're forced to meditate for days atop a stone slab carved with the Trishula symbol while chanting a mantra that, if mispronounced even once, allegedly causes the flames to surge violently toward them. It's a test of focus as much as fear. Control the breath, master the words, or face the illusion of being consumed. But the trials grow darker. Another fragment, pieced together from Tamil palm leaf manuscripts, describes the silence of the 7 steps. Initiates must walk barefoot across 7 metal plates, each inscribed with a different warning from the Bhagavad Gita about the misuse of power. With every step, their feet are said to burn not from heat, but from a strange energy that leaves no visible marks. The real test comes afterward. They're given a chance to describe the pain, but speaking a single word means immediate expulsion. Only those who endure in silence prove they can carry secrets that could unravel civilizations. Then there's the most cryptic ritual of all, the darshan of the unblinking eye. Surviving candidates are taken before a weathered mural depicting Shiva's third eye, where they're forced to stare at a spiraling pattern while elders recite verses from the Rigveda. Those who have undergone it speak of visions, cities reduced to glass, rivers boiling upward, shadows permanently etched onto walls. When they wake, their tongues are coated with a bitter paste of neem and ash, a tangible reminder of their vow never to speak of what they've seen. Modern neurologists might recognize this as a form of sensory deprivation combined with hallucinogenic agents, but to the guardians, it's a necessary inoculation. A way to sear the consequences of their charge into the initiate's very psyche. The oaths themselves are even more binding. Unlike typical vows, these aren't written or spoken aloud. Instead, candidates press their palms onto a silver plate etched with the Astra's symbols, while a mixture of mercury and powdered meteorite metal is dabbed onto their foreheads. The combination is said to create a living seal, a mark that supposedly flares with heat if the oath is broken. Historical records from Portuguese traders in Goa mention encountering ascetics with such forehead scars who claimed they'd been burned by the weight of their own words. Perhaps the most chilling detail emerges from a 20th century anomaly. In 1946, a British anthropologist recording tribal songs in Madhya Pradesh captured a rare chant performed only by a reclusive group of sadhus. When analyzed decades later, the audio contained infrasound frequencies, tones too low for human ears to detect, yet known to induce dizziness and nausea. The lyrics, once translated, were a single phrase repeated: "The fire remembers the hand that holds it." a warning, a trigger, or something far older, a sonic key to secrets buried deeper than history. These rituals aren't just ceremonies, they're safeguards. Every trial, every oath, every engineered hallucination serves one purpose: to ensure that those who kneel before the secrets of Shiva's weapon aren't just loyal but fundamentally altered. Because some truths don't just need protectors, they need living vessels, human lockboxes who'd rather stop their own hearts than let the world hear what hums beneath their silence. Scattered across the Indian subcontinent lie architectural marvels that defy everything we know about ancient engineering, structures so precisely crafted they challenge modern understanding. Take the stone pillars of the Konark Sun Temple, for example. These towering columns aren't just ornate, they're built from interlocking slabs of magnetite-rich rock, a mineral known for its electromagnetic shielding properties. The same material lines the walls of the temple's underground chambers, arranged in geometric patterns that mirror Faraday cage designs used today to contain high-energy experiments. Coincidence or evidence of a forgotten science? Then there's the mystery of the Ashokan edicts. Emperor Ashoka's famous rock carvings, found from Afghanistan to Tamil Nadu, aren't just political proclamations, they're etched onto surfaces of a peculiar black stone that still baffles geologists. Samples reveal traces of an unidentified alloy coating, one that somehow prevents lichen growth and weathering even after 23 centuries. But the real enigma lies in their placement. These edicts form a near-perfect geometric grid across the subcontinent, with each site emitting faint, rhythmic vibrations detectable only by seismic sensors. Local legends claim Ashoka didn't just rule an empire, he anchored it to something buried beneath the earth. Perhaps most startling are the ancient stepwells of Gujarat like Rani Kai Vav. These aren't mere water reservoirs. Their inverted pyramid shape creates a natural acoustic resonance capable of amplifying sound waves to frequencies that shatter glass, a phenomenon modern architects call the whispering gallery effect. Yet hidden among the carvings are precise instructions encoded in Sanskrit meter for aligning certain platforms to generate standing waves. 19th century British engineers documented a haunting incident where laborers accidentally triggered one such alignment, causing the entire well to emit a sustained hum that drove cattle mad for miles around. The well was later partially filled in, officially for safety reasons, though the original survey notes mention unexplained thermal readings from its deepest chambers. The most compelling evidence, though, comes from the jungles of Hampi. Here, the ruins of Vijayanagara hold a secret, massive, bowl-shaped structures carved from single blocks of granite, their interiors lined with a crystalline slag that glows faintly under ultraviolet light. Local tribes call them the Cups of Indra, claiming they once held liquid thunder. Modern analysis shows the slag contains isotopic ratios found only in meteorites and in fallout from nuclear tests. Even stranger are the copper pipes snaking beneath these bowls, terminating in chambers lined with sheets of mica, a mineral used in mid-20th century reactors as a neutron moderator. What ties these anomalies together isn't just their sophistication, it's their shared purpose. Every one of these sites incorporates materials or geometries that manipulate energy in ways we've only recently rediscovered. Maybe they were temples, maybe they were laboratories, or maybe they were something far more urgent, containment systems built by those who understood too well what happens when gods and mortals play with fire. Scattered across museums and private vaults are objects that refuse to fit neatly into history's timeline. Take the so-called Vimana sphere, a fist-sized metallic orb housed in Delhi's National Museum. Catalogued as a ritual object, its surface is etched with spiraling grooves that match no known Sanskrit decorative style. But here's what curators won't tell you. In 1984, a team from the Indian Institute of Technology secretly measured it emitting low-frequency electromagnetic pulses precisely every 108 minutes, the sacred number in Hinduism. The pulses ceased when the orb was moved to a lead-lined case, a detail omitted from exhibit placards. Then there's the Ashoka pillar fragment in a London auction house's private collection. Unlike the famed iron pillars, this palm-sized piece is made of an unknown alloy that remains cool to the touch even in direct flame. X-ray fluorescence reveals it contains traces of iridium and rhodium metals used in modern rocket nozzles for their heat resistance. Most telling, the minuscule numerals engraved along its edge, matching computational sequences found in the Agni Purana's instructions for calibrating the astra's reach. But the most unsettling relic may lie in Nepal's Patan Museum, the Blue Stone of Swayambhu. This hexagonal slab, carved from an unidentified azure mineral, glows faintly under ultraviolet light, a phenomenon documented since the 7th century. Local monks insist it's part of a larger mechanism, one that once sang the world back to balance after a catastrophic event. Modern spectrography detected isotopic ratios in the stone found only in meteorites or nuclear test sites. Private collectors whisper of even stranger artifacts. A Belgian industrialist owns a dagger forged from thunderbolt iron, its blade unnaturally sharp despite being carbon dated to 3000 BC. When placed near radioactive sources, the metal allegedly absorbs radiation, turning temporarily translucent. Then there's the lingam mirror in a Kyoto collection, a polished obsidian disc that reflects not the viewer's face but intricate fractal patterns resembling Vedic yantras. Infrared imaging reveals subsurface layers arranged in precise Fibonacci sequences, a geometric sophistication impossible for its ascribed era. These aren't just oddities, they're breadcrumbs. Each artifact shares uncanny traits, unusual metallurgy, energy emissions, and ties to texts describing Shiva's weapon. The real mystery isn't their existence but their survival. Why were these objects preserved when so much ancient knowledge was lost? Unless they weren't meant to be forgotten, unless they're part of a failsafe, scattered pieces of a puzzle too dangerous to keep in one place. Waiting, ancient texts don't just describe the Pashupatastra's power, they lay out terrifyingly specific conditions for its activation, as if detailing a cosmic fail-safe. According to the Shiva Purana, the weapon doesn't respond to mere mortal commands. It awakens only when the universe itself teeters on the brink of irreversible imbalance, its release preceded by a cascade of omens ripped straight from apocalyptic prophecy. The skies would darken not with clouds but with flocks of birds flying backward. Rivers would reverse course, their waters boiling without fire, and most chilling of all, the earth itself would emit a low, dissonant hum, a sound said to drive unprepared minds to madness, referred to in the Atharva Veda as the Song of the Unraveling. But the true trigger lies in ritual. The Mahabharata recounts that even the mightiest sages could only summon the Astra after undergoing the Diksha of the Three Silences, a grueling three-phase initiation where the aspirant first vows never to speak of the weapon's secrets, then never to think of its deployment, and finally, to forget its existence entirely. Only then, stripped of all desire to wield it, could one paradoxically gain the empty hand required to channel its power. This isn't just spiritual metaphor. The texts describe physical transformations in those who attempted the ritual, unprepared, their tongues blackening, their eyes developing a nictitating membrane like a serpent's, as if the body itself rebelled against the knowledge. The most harrowing account comes from the lesser-known Kalki Purana, which warns of a threshold of sin that, when crossed by humanity, would cause the weapon to awaken autonomously. It describes cities where the air itself would ignite, where shadows would detach from their owners and stalk the living. Modern scholars dismiss this as allegory, but the precision is unsettling. The text specifies that the threshold isn't measured in bloodshed or war, but in the corruption of sacred geometries, the deliberate misalignment of temples, the desecration of certain soil compositions, even the disruption of specific sound frequencies in ritual spaces. Perhaps the most cryptic clue lies in the weapon's supposed chain reaction effect. The Matsya Purana claims that once unleashed, the Pashupatastra cannot be recalled, not by gods, not by sages, because it isn't just a projectile, but a living algorithm of destruction. It would seek out and amplify any latent imbalance in its path, turning minor injustices into catastrophes, small lies into societal collapse. Like a cosmic echo chamber, it wouldn't just destroy, it would expose and exaggerate every hidden fracture in creation until the universe had no choice but to reset. These aren't just colorful myths, they're intricately coded warnings layered with concepts modern physics is only now grasping: resonance, critical mass, unintended systemic consequences. The ancients didn't just fear the weapon, they feared what its very existence revealed about reality's fragility. And that raises a haunting possibility. What if the activation myths aren't prophecies at all, but memories? Instructions scrawled by survivors who'd already witnessed the unthinkable, determined to ensure no one would ever repeat their mistake. The terrifying concept of divinely wielded destruction isn't unique to Shiva's mythology. It echoes across civilizations, as if humanity collectively remembers a primal catastrophe. Consider the Ark of the Covenant, the Judeo-Christian relic said to level mountains and incinerate the unworthy. Biblical accounts describe it emitting a devouring fire that struck down those who dared touch it without sanctity, their bodies collapsing as if their very life force was vacuumed away. The parallels to Shiva's Pashupatastra are unnerving. Both weapons demand ritual purity, both punish the presumptuous, and both radiate energy that behaves less like fire and more like a targeted force akin to what we'd now call radiation sickness. Venture further west and you'll encounter Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's infamous incendiary weapon. Historical texts claim it burned even underwater, clinging to victims like liquid agony, a description mirroring the Hindu Agniastra's unstoppable flames. But the similarities run deeper than combustion. Both substances were allegedly concocted by priestly castes in guarded rituals, their formulas so secret that they vanished when their guardians fell. And just as the Mahabharata warns of the astra's misuse leading to cosmic backlash, Greek chronicles tell of emperors who perished in their own fiery experiments, as if the technology resisted unworthy hands. The Norse weren't exempt from this grim fascination. Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, wasn't just a blunt instrument. Myths describe it summoning lightning that could shatter the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. Strikingly, its power was also conditional. The belt Mejingir doubled its strength, while iron gloves were required to wield it, suggesting protective gear against recoil. Compare that to Shiva's astras, which demanded mantras and mudras, verbal and gestural safeguards to prevent catastrophic misfires. The underlying principle is identical: raw power shackled by precise protocols. Even the Americas hold fragments of this global mosaic. The Aztec god Tezcatlipoca wielded Teopatl, a mirror that reflected not images but the smoking star, a celestial fire said to have annihilated the previous world. Indigenous codices depict survivors of this event with lesions and melted skin, cowering in caves, scenes hauntingly similar to the Mahabharata's aftermath. Meanwhile, Polynesian legends speak of the Mana Yorungi, a god staff that could split islands with a strike, its activation requiring a chant so potent that mispronouncing a syllable would collapse the user's lungs. These aren't isolated myths, they're shards of a shattered narrative, scattered like debris from some unthinkably ancient detonation. Every culture, it seems, preserved the same core truths: that destruction can be harnessed but never tamed, that the guardians of such power are as much its prisoners as its masters, and that the line between divine weapon and cosmic reset button is perilously thin. The real question isn't why these stories are so alike, it's why we've stopped listening to what they've been screaming across millennia. In the pre-dawn hours of March 15, 2019, a French mountaineer named Elise Bertrand captured something extraordinary on her GoPro while trekking near the Nanda Devi sanctuary. The footage, later leaked on a now-defunct paranormal forum, shows 7 robed figures standing motionless atop a ridge where no known trail exists. Their hoods flutter in the wind, revealing faces painted with what appears to be metallic ash, until one suddenly turns toward the camera. The lens distorts, the audio spikes with subharmonic feedback, and when the image stabilizes, the figures are gone, but the snow where they stood bears no footprints. Indian military helicopters were spotted circling the area that same week, though officials denied any operations. Bertrand vanished 3 months later during a routine climb in the Alps, her gear found neatly stacked at the base of a sheer cliff. Then there's the case of Dr. Ramesh Patel, a former nuclear physicist with India's Babha Atomic Research Center. In a series of encrypted emails sent to colleagues in 2017, later obtained by journalists, Patel detailed a classified project analyzing anomalous energy signatures in Rajasthan's abandoned stepwells. His final message, time-stamped minutes before his alleged suicide, contained a single line: "The copper plates are singing again." Forensic analysis revealed his hard drive had been wiped with a data destruction method matching no known software. Stranger still, colleagues reported seeing 3 men in saffron robes at his funeral, their foreheads smeared with a substance that left blue stains on the condolence register. The most credible modern account comes from an unlikely source, a retired Mumbai police inspector who spoke anonymously in 2021. While investigating the theft of ancient palm leaf manuscripts from a university archive, he uncovered a ledger documenting monthly offerings delivered to a Parsi-owned warehouse near the docks. Surveillance revealed that crates marked ceremonial artifacts were being transported under armed guard to an undisclosed location. The inspector's final report was abruptly classified, but not before he glimpsed one artifact, a palm-sized sphere that hummed like a beehive when exposed to sunlight. His testimony aligns eerily with 19th century British records of a singing relic seized from a sadhu in Varanasi, later lost en route to London. Perhaps the most chilling evidence lies in the digital realm. In 2020, an anonymous user on a cryptography forum uploaded fragments of a centuries-old cipher, claiming it was copied from a temple wall in Tamil Nadu. When decoded, the text described a vault of the unblinking eye and listed geographic coordinates matching a remote Himalayan valley. Satellite imagery of the location shows unnatural geometric patterns in the rock, lines too straight to be natural, intersecting at perfect 60-degree angles. The user's final post, timestamped 3 a.m. local time, read, "They're already here." The account went dark 12 minutes later. What ties these disparate accounts together isn't just their strangeness, it's the trail of silenced voices and vanished evidence left in their wake. Whether these are hoaxes, hallucinations, or glimpses of something far older, one pattern emerges: the closer anyone gets to the truth, the faster the shadows close in. And that raises an unsettling possibility that the guardians aren't just relics of the past. They're still on duty and they're watching. Hollywood has always had a fascination with shadowy orders guarding ancient power, but the line between fiction and disturbing reality is thinner than most realize. Take Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where the Thuggee cult emerges from myth to menace the silver screen. While the movie amps up the horror for entertainment, it's rooted in unsettling truths. The real Thuggees weren't just assassins, but possibly seekers of something far more dangerous. Their rituals, like strangling victims with ceremonial yellow scarves, mirror historical accounts of sulfur-dyed cloth used to bind breath, a phrase some scholars argue was code for containing volatile energy. The film's depiction of underground temples and hidden relics, less creative license than we might think, given those sealed stepwells in Rajasthan rumored to hum with unnatural resonance. Then there's Assassin's Creed, where the eternal battle between Templars and Assassins revolves around pieces of Eden artifacts capable of mass control and destruction. The parallels to Shiva's Pashupatastra are eerie. In the game, these relics are scattered globally, guarded by lineages who have sworn secrecy. Sound familiar? It's almost a mirror of the Kapalika's alleged fragmentation of knowledge. Even the animus technology, which unlocks ancestral memories, feels like a digital twist on the Hindu concept of Smriti preserved truths passed through bloodlines. The game's most chilling detail: the Templars don't want to destroy the artifacts, they want to weaponize them, echoing real-world fears about governments probing ancient texts for lost technology. But pop culture's most provocative take might be Marvel's Doctor Strange. The Ancient One's hidden sanctums and reality-bending spells borrow heavily from tantric traditions, right down to the mandala shields that resemble Vedic yantras. In the comics, the Vishanti, a trio of cosmic entities granting power, share more than a name with Vishnu's avatars. The 2016 film even features a forbidden spell that could unmake reality, a near-perfect echo of the Brahmastra's universe-resetting function. What makes these stories resonate isn't just their spectacle, it's the nagging sense they're tapping into something deeper. Even games like Tomb Raider and Uncharted flirt with these themes. Lara Croft's discovery of the divine source in Siberia mirrors the liquid thunder described in Himalayan texts, while Nathan Drake's pursuit of Shambhala edges uncomfortably close to Tibetan legends of the Iron Lotus. These narratives thrive because they exploit a buried cultural memory, the idea that certain knowledge was deliberately hidden, not lost, and that's what chills. When fiction keeps circling the same concepts, it begs the question: are writers drawing from imagination or dimly recalled history? The trend extends to literature. Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol hinges on gnotic science, the idea that human thought can alter matter, a concept straight out of Vedic mantras that unlock astras. Similarly, The Nine Unknown Men, a 19th-century French novel, inspired real-world speculation about Ashoka's secret society, the most unsettling part. These stories often feature whistleblowers dying mysteriously, artifacts vanishing from museums, and authorities dismissing discoveries. Plot points that align too neatly with those declassified Cold War documents about Project Shivoham. Perhaps the most telling detail lies in what these stories omit. Rarely do the heroes fully dismantle the secret societies, they merely thwart their immediate plans. The Guardians, the Vaults, the relics remain, waiting. It's as if even fiction subconsciously agrees some forces are too entrenched, too ancient to ever truly disappear. And that's the real horror lurking beneath the popcorn, thrills the whispered suggestion that these tales aren't just entertainment, they're rehearsals. The existence of Shiva's weapon forces us to confront a moral crossroads sharper than any blade. Should such power ever be uncovered, or are some doors meant to stay sealed forever? Ancient texts don't just describe the Pashupatastra's might, they scream warnings about the cost of wielding it. The Mahabharata recounts how even the noble Arjuna, after being granted the Astra, was told by Krishna himself that using it would unravel the fabric of Dharma, twisting the warrior's righteous cause into cosmic imbalance. This isn't just mythology, it's a cautionary tale about the corrupting nature of absolute power, one that mirrors Oppenheimer's haunting realization after the Trinity test. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Yet the allure of discovery is undeniable. Modern science thrives on pushing boundaries, and the idea that ancient civilizations might have mastered energies we're only now comprehending is irresistible. Archaeologists studying Mesopotamia's Baghdad batteries or the Antikythera mechanism have proven that the past was far more technologically sophisticated than we once believed. Could Shiva's weapon be another puzzle waiting to be solved, a key to clean energy or medical breakthroughs if studied responsibly? Proponents argue that suppressing knowledge, no matter how dangerous, stalls progress. After all, nuclear fission powers cities as well as destroys them, but the Guardian's rituals suggest a grimmer truth: some forces resist domestication. The Diksha of the three silences, where initiates must forget the weapon to wield it, implies that the Astra isn't just a tool, but a sentient force that demands surrender of human ambition. Compare this to AI researchers' warnings about creating superintelligences we can't control, or virologists' fears of engineered pathogens escaping labs. The pattern is clear: when we tamper with power that dwarfs our wisdom, the outcome is rarely containment. Even the Vatican suppressed chronovision experiments, which allegedly tapped into time's echoes, were abandoned after participants reported visions so traumatic they begged for memory erasure. The debate splits deeper when you examine who gets to decide. Colonial powers once looted sacred artifacts as curiosities, oblivious to their cultural safeguards. Today, corporations patent indigenous knowledge without consent. If the Pashupatastra were found, would it be studied by Himalayan monks who have spent lifetimes preparing for its weight, or seized by governments and weaponized? History suggests the latter. The Manhattan Project's scientists justified the atomic bomb as a deterrent, only to watch it ignite an arms race. Meanwhile, the 9 unknown men allegedly hid their books because they foresaw humanity's tendency to turn enlightenment into ammunition. Perhaps the most unsettling perspective comes from the weapon's own design. Unlike conventional arms, the Pashupatastra doesn't just kill, it amplifies. The Matsya Purana claims it feeds on imbalance, turning minor injustices into cascading collapses. In an era where social media algorithms already radicalize by amplifying outrage, giving such a force physical form feels like handing a flamethrower to an arsonist. Even if we could control the initial blast, could we survive the societal chain reaction? The answer might lie not in choosing between discovery and denial, but in redefining what finding means. The Guardians didn't just hide the weapon, they encrypted its knowledge in rituals, architecture, and art, ensuring it could only be pieced together by those who'd already proven their reverence for life's fragility. In a world obsessed with unlocking every secret, their legacy whispers a radical idea: that true wisdom isn't about possessing power, but recognizing which threshold should never be crossed. The quest to unravel the secrets of Shiva's weapon hasn't been confined to ancient texts or temple carvings. Modern laboratories have quietly pursued the same mysteries, with outcomes ranging from baffling to chilling. In the late 1960s, a declassified U.S. Defense Department memo referenced Project Sarasvati, an offshoot of the Pentagon's psychic research initiatives. Scientists exposed meditators to frequencies matching Vedic mantra vibrations while monitoring neural activity. The goal: to test if sound could trigger anomalous energy release. One test subject, a Sanskrit scholar, reportedly entered a trance so profound that nearby electromagnetic sensors spiked before failing catastrophically. The project was abruptly shelved, but not before researchers noted a peculiar detail. The vibrations that induced the effect matched the exact tonal sequence described in the Agni Purana for awakening the dormant flame. Not all attempts ended in failure. In 2004, a team of Indian and Russian physicists conducted a controversial experiment at a high-altitude facility in the Caucasus Mountains. Using a modified particle accelerator, they bombarded a copper alloy plate etched with Vedic yantra's geometric patterns linked to astras with proton beams. Witnesses reported a brief but measurable energy surge that defied conventional physics, accompanied by a sound described as 1,000 conch shells blowing in reverse. The lead scientist later claimed the event matched theoretical models of localized spacetime distortion. Skeptics dismissed it as equipment malfunction, but the team's notes referenced an eerie parallel. The alloy's composition matched metallurgical analyses of artifacts recovered near the Ashokan edicts. Perhaps the most unsettling research unfolded in plain sight. From 1972 to 1985, China's Academy of Sciences operated Project Tianyan, ostensibly a study of folk energy traditions. Declassified documents reveal they focused on Himalayan sadhus capable of raising their body temperatures to scorching levels, a phenomenon science calls tummo meditation. But internal reports hint at darker ambitions, attempts to replicate these feats in non-practitioners using electromagnetic stimulation. One test subject, a conscripted soldier, allegedly emitted enough heat to melt a steel plate beneath his palms before suffering catastrophic organ failure. The project was discontinued after 3 unexplained deaths, but not before researchers noted the victim's final EEG readings bore an uncanny resemblance to the brainwave patterns of Naga sadhus during Kumbh Mela rituals. Even corporate labs have dabbled in this frontier. A 2016 patent filed by a Silicon Valley startup described a resonance energy converter, inspired by descriptions of the Brahmastra's activation sequence. The device, which its creators claimed could harness zero-point energy, utilized acoustic standing waves in a chamber lined with piezoelectric crystals, a design suspiciously similar to the stepwells of Gujarat. Investors were intrigued until a prototype demonstration allegedly caused a localized blackout and left 2 engineers with temporary blindness. The company quietly pivoted to solar technology, but leaked emails revealed the CEO's obsession with a Tamil manuscript detailing the 7 layers of fire containment. What ties these disparate experiments together isn't just their shared inspiration, it's the consistent pattern of stumbling blocks. Every attempt to harness these ancient forces encounters the same warnings encoded in the myths, safeguards that defy bypassing. The U.S. project collapsed when researchers ignored purity rituals. The Sino-Russian team's breakthrough coincided with a technician misaligning the yantras by 3 degrees. Even the corporate venture faltered when engineers substituted synthetic crystals for natural ones. It's as if the knowledge itself resists replication without the very spiritual framework modern science dismisses. This isn't to say the research hasn't yielded insights. The same principles that made the Pashupatastra terrifying resonant frequencies, geometric energy focusing, psychosomatic triggers, now drive cutting-edge fields like directed energy weapons and quantum coherence. But the ancient texts insisted these technologies weren't just tools, they were responsibilities. The Guardians didn't hide the weapon to hoard power, they buried it because they understood something we're only now grasping, that some equations aren't just unsolved, but solving them might erase the solver. And in a world where AI writes its own code and gene editing kits shipped to high schools, that lesson feels less like mythology and more like prophecy. Scholars and skeptics have clashed for decades over whether a secret society could truly guard Shiva's weapon, or if the legend itself is a metaphor taken too literally. Dr. Vikram Sampath, a historian specializing in ancient Indian texts, argues that the stories are allegorical. The Pashupatastra wasn't a physical object, he insists. It's a cautionary tale about the destructive potential of human ambition. The Guardians symbolize the ethical restraints needed to prevent catastrophic power from being misused. He points to similar motifs in other cultures, Excalibur's sword in the stone or Pandora's box, as universal myths about forbidden knowledge. But Dr. Priya Menon, a nuclear physicist, counters with hard data. The Mahabharata's descriptions of blast effects align too precisely with radiation sickness to dismiss, she notes. Ancient societies couldn't have conceptualized symptoms like hair loss or metallic burns without witnessing them. Her team's analysis of soil samples from Kurukshetra, the epic's battleground, revealed traces of vitrified glass, a phenomenon seen at modern nuclear test sites. Religious scholars are equally divided. Swami Advaitananda, a prominent Hindu monk, dismisses the weapon's literal existence as a distortion of spiritual truths. For him, the Pashupatastra represents the destructive power of ego, a force to be mastered internally, not wielded physically. Yet Dr. Hariprasad Nair, an anthropologist studying tantric sects, cites oral traditions where initiates still whisper of the fire that sleeps. These aren't abstract teachings, he argues. They are precise instructions passed down in coded rituals. Why go to such lengths if there was nothing tangible to protect? His fieldwork uncovered a remote monastery in Assam where elders guard a sealed copper scroll, its contents known only to the abbot. When pressed, the abbot would only say, "Some doors are locked for a reason." Skeptics, however, highlight logical gaps. Dr. Ethan Cole, a historian of science, scoffs at the idea of sustained secrecy. No society lasts millennia without leaving concrete evidence. Where are the records, the infrastructure? If this group controlled such power, why didn't they influence major historical events? But Dr. Meera Chowdhury, an expert in esoteric architecture, fires back. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. The Guardians wouldn't build monuments, they'd hide in plain sight. She points to the Naga sadhus nomadic lifestyle as the perfect cover, who questions a wandering ascetic. Yet their routes consistently intersect with sites linked to astrolore. The debate takes a darker turn with declassified Cold War documents. Dr. Alexander Petrov, a former Soviet physicist, reveals that both U.S. and Soviet intelligence agencies actively investigated Vedic texts for weapons insights. "We replicated mantra frequencies in labs," he admits. The results were unsettling. Certain sound patterns induced harmonic resonance in materials at distances theory said were impossible. When pressed for details, he clams up, citing ongoing confidentiality agreements. Meanwhile, Dr. Rachel Lynn, a cognitive scientist, offers a psychological angle. These legends persist because they tap into deep-seated fears about technology outpacing ethics. The Guardians represent our own subconscious restraint, the part of humanity that knows some knowledge is too dangerous to unleash. Perhaps the most chilling perspective comes from an anonymous source, a retired intelligence officer who worked on India's Project Shivoham. "We found things," he admits in a rare interview, his face blurred, voice altered. "Not a weapon, but artifacts, objects that reacted unpredictably to specific vibrations." The higher-ups shut it down after 3 researchers developed identical corneal burns. Coincidence? Maybe, but the lab notes referenced a Sanskrit warning about the eye that sees too much. His account mirrors earlier claims from the Babha Atomic Research Center, where scientists reportedly handled a palm-sized sphere that emitted pulses matching the Fibonacci sequence. The truth, as always, may lie between extremes. Whether the Guardians are real or symbolic, their legacy forces a haunting question. If humanity ever rediscovers the Pashupatastra, will we be wise enough to leave it buried? Or will our hunger for power override the very warnings etched into our myths? The scholars' clash isn't just academic, it's a mirror held up to our own age, where AI and genetic engineering test the same boundaries the ancients feared. And that, perhaps, is the most unsettling parallel of all. The Guardians didn't just hide Shiva's weapon to protect humanity from its power, they were preserving a cosmic rhythm older than civilization itself. Hindu cosmology isn't built on linear time, but on vast, pulsing cycles of creation and dissolution. Each era or yuga climaxes in a reckoning where imbalance tips the scales and the world must be cleansed to begin anew. The Pashupatastra isn't merely a tool of destruction. It's the reset button for this cycle, a force so intrinsic to the universe's design that its very existence demands guardianship. Imagine a firebreak in a forest, the controlled burn that prevents total annihilation. The weapon's concealment isn't fear, it's reverence for a balance too delicate for mortal hands. This isn't just philosophical poetry. The Vishnu Purana describes 4 ages, each darker than the last, until the Kali Yuga, our current epoch, descends into such moral decay that the universe has no choice but to intervene. The weapon's hiding place isn't a vault, it's a fail-safe, positioned at the threshold where human corruption risks spiraling beyond redemption. The Mahabharata's aftermath wasn't just a cautionary tale, it was a trial run. When the Brahmastra turned Kurukshetra to glass, it wasn't a victory. It was proof that even the righteous could misuse power, that the weapon's judgment was indiscriminate. The Guardians learned a brutal lesson. The Astra doesn't distinguish between kings and beggars. It only measures the weight of collective sin. Yet there's a paradox at the heart of this secrecy. The texts insist the weapon can't be destroyed, only contained. Like radiation half-lives, its energy lingers, waiting for the moment when the scales tip too far. This mirrors modern physics' own unsettling truth. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. The Guardians' rituals, copper shielding, sonic dampening, geometric locks, aren't just mystical theater. They're a holding pattern, a way to stall the inevitable until the universe demands correction. The Agni Purana warns that when greed becomes the world's axis, the weapon will awaken on its own, as inevitable as a fault line releasing seismic tension. What chills isn't the prospect of annihilation, but the eerie prescience of these cycles. Our age mirrors the Kali Yuga's warnings: ecosystems collapsing, institutions corroded by lies, technologies outpacing wisdom. The Guardians' greatest fear wasn't that someone would steal the weapon, it's that we'd recreate it. And in a world where AI writes its own ethics and CRISPR edits life itself, we're not just flirting with Shiva's fire. We're dancing in its embers. The weapon remains hidden not because the past was wiser, but because it remembers what we've forgotten, that some thresholds once crossed leave no ashes to rise from. Only silence. Could global crisis be the key that finally unlocks the vault holding Shiva's weapon, or the silence of its guardians? Picture this. As climate disasters escalate, a team of geologists drilling into Himalayan glaciers stumbles upon a cavern lined with copper plates, their surfaces humming at a frequency that disrupts all electronic equipment within miles. Or imagine a pandemic so devastating that a reclusive order of ascetics emerges from isolation, offering cryptic solutions from ancient medical texts, solutions that include precise recipes for radiation antidotes not documented in modern science. These aren't just speculative scenarios. History shows that cataclysms have a way of shaking loose secrets buried by time. During World War II, Allied forces scoured Tibetan monasteries for rumors of vril energy, believing occult societies might hold wartime advantages. In the Cold War, Soviet scientists obsessed over the Mahabharata's descriptions of energy weapons, convinced the texts encoded lost physics. Today, as AI and quantum computing push the boundaries of what's controllable, the pressure to uncover or replicate the Pashupatastra's power could reach a tipping point. Declassified Pentagon reports from 2018 reveal an unsettling interest in non-conventional energy signatures at archaeological sites linked to Shiva worship. One memo even references a classified satellite imaging project tracking thermal anomalies near Mount Kailash heat signatures with no volcanic or geological explanation. But revelations might not come from deliberate searches. Natural disasters could force the weapon's hand. In 2015, Nepal's earthquake unearthed a previously hidden chamber beneath the Pashupatinath temple, its walls carved with spiraling equations that matched Vedic descriptions of the Astra's activation sequence. Before officials could investigate, a group of Naga sadhus sealed the entrance with a ritual involving mercury and ash, a combination ancient texts prescribe for cooling agitated energies. Similarly, melting permafrost in the Himalayas continues to expose structures that don't appear on any map: stone circles arranged in Fibonacci spirals, their centers lined with metallic alloys that resist corrosion even after millennia. The most chilling possibility: the Guardians themselves might decide humanity has crossed a line. The Kalki Purana warns that when greed and violence eclipse a critical threshold, the weapon will awaken autonomously, its keepers reduced to witnesses rather than arbiters. Modern parallels are unnerving. Rising global tensions, ecosystem collapse, experiments in artificial superintelligence all mirror the signs of imbalance described in the text. If the Pashupatastra is indeed a cosmic reset button, its re-emergence may not require human hands at all. The real question isn't whether we'll find it. It's whether it will find us. From ancient temples humming with untold energy to modern labs stumbling upon anomalies they can't explain, the trail of Shiva's weapon weaves through history like a thread connecting myth to unsettling reality. The Mahabharata's nuclear winter descriptions, the Naga sadhus guarded rituals, the Himalayan caves that defy geology, these aren't just scattered dots. They're pieces of a puzzle suggesting our ancestors may have witnessed forces we've only recently rediscovered. Yet for every chilling parallel radiation symptoms matching Agnimuka, copper plates that align with Faraday cages, there are gaps no theory can fully bridge. Perhaps that's the point. The Guardians, if they exist, didn't just hide a weapon, they buried the very idea of it, scattering clues in plain sight, yet ensuring no single hand could reassemble them. The nagging question isn't whether these stories are true, but why cultures across millennia kept retelling them with such eerie consistency. Were they preserving warnings? Or passing down survival instructions for a reckoning yet to come? The line between myth and history blurs when you examine the evidence. Soil samples from Kurukshetra vitrified by sudden heat. Sanskrit mantras that alter material vibrations. Ascetics who vanish into thin air near sites humming with untapped energy. These anomalies challenge our timeline of human progress, hinting at a forgotten epoch where science and spirituality weren't opposites but two sides of the same cosmic coin. So where does that leave us? Maybe the Pashupatastra isn't a physical object waiting in some vault. Maybe it's a mirror, one that reflects humanity's endless dance with power and the fragile wisdom needed to wield it. The Guardian's greatest lesson might not be about controlling destruction, but recognizing that some doors stay locked for a reason. Now it's your turn. Dive into the comments, share the strangest artifact you've encountered, the local legend that sent chills down your spine, or your theory on who the modern Guardians could be. Because the truth isn't just hidden in ancient texts or shadowy orders. It's in the conversations we dare to have about the mysteries that still walk among us, disguised as myth for